Hello and welcome to Sacred Sobriety, A Path for the Soul, a podcast that embarks on a transformative journey where we delve deep into the heart of addiction, codependency, and family dysfunction. I invite you to join me as we navigate the complex terrain of recovery, guided by empathetic narratives and soulful insights, where each episode is a sacred space where you'll hopefully find solace, inspiration, and the tools to reclaim your power and reconfigure your relationship with yourself and your past. Whether you're in the throes of addiction, navigating the aftermath of family trauma, or seeking a deeper connection with your authentic self, this podcast offers a compassionate, non-judgmental haven for your healing journey. Embark on this transformative odyssey where the path to sobriety becomes a path to self-discovery, emotional liberation, and the reclamation of your innate wholeness. Tune in and let Sacred Sobriety, A Path for the Soul, be your guide on this profound and necessary exploration of the human spirit. And in this episode, it is the first episode. I'm your host, Timothy Berman, who is celebrating 20 years of sobriety from alcohol and 10 years of emotional sobriety from family dysfunction and codependency. And what I want to focus on today, since this is the first podcast episode that I'm doing this, I'm going to go over my story and share with you my journey and where I've risen from the ashes and was on this journey to find a sense of purpose and meaning in my life. And so I want to share how I emerged from my struggles with new meaning and direction in life, and then focus on the turning point where I began to experience a true depth of healing, the path of healing that I personally embarked on, where you will discover the moment that changed everything for me and set me on the road to recovery. And then from darkness to light, I go and share the redemption of my story. I open up about the transformation that has helped me reclaim my life and find hope. And then finding strength in pain. Again, my own story of recovery, where I invite you to join me as I explore how I found strength in vulnerability and learned to heal from my past hurts and hang-ups. And then the last point of discussion is sharing with you how I found purpose, how I found meaning, and how I became the hero of my own story. And writing my own story, because recovery, I believe, is about writing your own story. And so in that, I discuss how discovering my purpose has helped me rewrite my story and embrace life fully from a mindful, crucified Christian perspective. And so stay tuned, and we'll get into this episode where I share my story, share my thoughts, and hopefully it inspires you, encourages you, and edifies you. So, how does one begin to write their story? Where do you begin when you want to tell your story of what you've been through, the challenges you faced, and what you've learned from those challenges and those obstacles? And I think the best thing for me is to begin with a conversation I had years ago with someone. And he said something to me that was kind of took me back a little bit. And as he sat there staring at me with a blank expression on his face, he made the statement, "You don't know what it's like being homeless." And then he looked away in shame. And all I can think of in that moment is, you don't know my story. And nobody really knows my story because I never really have had an opportunity to talk about it, or I was at the time maybe too ashamed to talk about it because I didn't want people to see me as a defective individual. I didn't want to see me, didn't want people to view me with a way that I was less, that I had no value. And I think that stems from the fact that I bought into the idea that I couldn't understand and value who I was as an individual. And so I didn't express myself. I was always the one who would go out of their way to ensure other people were comfortable. I did not want people to be uncomfortable around me. And so I engaged in what is known as people-pleasing behavior. And so I had this attitude that, if I could just please people and show that I am worthy, and then I can receive the validation or recognition that I needed. And one of the biggest challenges in my life was that there was a time between the late 90s and early 2000s that I really struggled with homelessness. And I struggled with alcohol off and on. I was more of a heavy binge drinker, a weekend warrior. And I had a drinking buddy who was my best friend. He was like a brother to me. And we would hit the karaoke bars every Friday or Saturday night when payday hit. And we would see how often we would get rejected by the girlies. And so, and, he also was in this chaotic, place in his life as well, where, we would find ourselves homeless, and we would, we kind of were, in this best friend, yet it was a very toxic friendship, and it was a codependent relationship with that. We would go and shoot pool, we would go and eat dinner, we would hit the library and get into religious debates and discussions. And it was at the time of my life as well when I was an apostate of the LDS faith, the Mormon faith. And so I was just living, I call it my roaring 30s, this period of time. And so when this statement was made, that I didn't know what it was like to be homeless, I just wanted to share and say, I know exactly what it's like. I've been there not once, not twice. I've been there multiple times. And so I do recall mentioning to him that I understand what it was like to being homeless. Not as, where I'm challenging him and pushing back on him. I'm just like, I do understand where you're at. I understand the struggles. And I was hoping to impress upon him, and hopefully impressing upon people who are listening to this, that it was not easy. Being homeless is not easy. It is challenging, and it is rough. You have stresses people don't even realize. You don't know where you're going to be able to lay your head. down at night. You don't even know that where you're going to lay your head down is going to be a safe space for you. You had no place to shower. You had no place to do that. I always bird bathed it at the the laundromat while clothes are washing. I'm in there, washing myself down and giving myself using a rag and washing myself and making sure that I was clean and hygienic. And a lot of people would comment when they say, "Oh, you're homeless. You don't look homeless," because I guess we have this notion of what a homeless person is supposed to look like, and we see them flying signs on the street. I never got to that extreme. However, I do know and understand that it was not easy for me, and nor do I believe that it was easy for any other person or easy for any person who is experiencing homelessness. And so the last stint of my homelessness was at a time in my life when a situation happened, and I found myself in Seattle, and all I had was a backpack. I had just given up a job that I had just started. I had also had an apartment that I gave up to as well because of a family emergency. And I ended up being left in Seattle with $50, a backpack that had where I had a pair of boots, a couple days worth of clothes, 3 cartons of Carnival cigarettes, and that was it. That was all I had on me. And I would walk the streets of Seattle at night because I didn't know where to sleep. And so I would walk all over downtown Seattle, Pike Place Market. I would just make that circuit. And then, I would sit down, I would rest and take little cat naps when I could. And then at, a certain time, I would then walk all the way down to the International District of Seattle and then walk all the way up past the International District, and then I can't remember the street, but I would walk and I'd turn the corner. There used to be a used car dealership there, and then there was this little labor hall outfit that I would go and I would work. Of course, I'm dog tired, but I'm out there working because one of the things that I know I needed to do was I needed to work, and even though I wasn't making much money, I made enough money to get me something to eat, get me a cup of coffee, and if need be, getting me a pack of cigarettes. And that was it, for I don't know how long, for a few weeks. And then somebody referred me over to this place called the Aloha Inn. And so I wanted to speak with him more. I wanted to share with him a cup of coffee, a hot meal, and share my story with him about my own personal struggles and experiences with being homeless. However, would he or anyone for that matter take the time to really listen to my story? I really have a hard time, sharing my story because I don't know if people want to hear it. I still do, even though I'm doing this podcast, and this is my story I'm sharing to you on this very first inaugural episode of Sacred Recovery. But I really struggle with whether or not people really want to take the time to really listen to my story, because we all experience significant trials in our lives. And so looking back on all those years that I spent as a vagabond, dealing with my own personal demons, I came to a place that helped me understand something I wish I had understood then. And that is, I learned now, over the last 10 or so years, to be patient with myself, to be patient with my Heavenly Father, to show grace towards myself as I'm allowing God to show grace towards me, and be ever vigilant and faithfully obedient to His will and purpose for my life. And so, like I said, between the mid-90s to the early part of 2000s, I had experienced homelessness numerous times, either being asked to leave a place I was living at or having lost employment and not able to pay rent or various other reasons. My life was chaotic. It was a mess. Much of my homeless stint was around Bellevue and Seattle, Washington area. I've stayed at local churches with a group of others who were homeless as well. Stayed at shelters, lived out of a pickup truck, a Mazda 323, etc. The last time I experienced homelessness was when I was left in Seattle and given $50. All I had, like I said, was a backpack, pair of work boots, 3 cartons of Cardinal cigarettes, and a couple of days' worth of clothes. It was definitely the lowest point in my life. Sense of confidence and resilience gone. Most depressing time of my life. What I did do and how I managed to survive even surprises me to this day. One thing my father has always taught me was to work hard no matter what the circumstances were. He always worked hard to provide for his family despite his health issues. So I had found a day labor hall. I showed up every day and was sent out. The kicker was I still had no place to live. And with only making about $50 per day, there was only enough to get a simple meal, a pack of smokes, and a cup of coffee. When I was not working, I pretty much walked over downtown Seattle, daring not to lay my head down. I also attended some of the community meals that were offered at various locations. If I was able to afford the $5 cost to stay at a shelter, I would. Then someone told me about the transitional housing program that helped people. I was able to get connected within that week. I made my call and was informed that a bed opened up. I was able to get in. And what is interesting is that when I stayed at this place, it's called the Aloha Inn. They converted an old hotel. It's ran by the Catholic Church, Archdiocese, and it provides transitional housing program. It was a 6-month program. And if you worked, you were required to not only save money, you were challenged to save $80 a week, and you had to show evidence that you're saving money. You then also had to work, and what you worked, in-house, running the front desk or the kitchen or things like that, that paid for your $15 a week rent kind of thing. And so I'm in this housing. I'm so tired. It took me a couple weeks to recuperate from just walking around downtown Seattle and being up all night. It really does a number on you. The sleep deprivation is no joke. And so I was so sleep deprived. I was just burned out. I was exhausted. And when I finally was able to get my faculties collected, I sat down one day, and I was in the kitchen there, and I sat down one day, and I wrote something out, kind of a poetic expression, allegory, and I'll just share this with you because this is part of my story. And so it's titled "My Question of My Being." And this was at the time, how I ended up in Seattle was because my dad was at Harborview Medical Center due to a very, very bad auto accident. And I keep this, and I refer to it off and on as a reminder. And it's titled "My Question of My Being," a personal essay of my bout with depression in 2004. Nothing, I silently replied. Then a thought, one simple thought that breached the empty field of my mind. Recalling an immortal phrase coined by one of history's most renowned playwrights, "To be or not to be, that is the question." This is what Shakespeare wrote. My question, what is the answer? Like the morning fog being burned off from the surface of a lake, the sun rises in magnificent splendor. The phrase fades with only emptiness in my mind, nothing. I just want to scream, wandering in the dark alleys and shadows of my thoughts. They seem to reach forth with cold, bony fingers, tugging to pull me into the suffocating darkness. Nothing, I shout in echoing silence of my own thoughts. No answer came. My voice reverberating off decaying walls of cinder blocks of mortar. Or maybe it had come, and I was preoccupied with the emptiness that leaves me numb. The only thing left is a barren wasteland, much like the desert. Scorching heat beating against sandy dunes. Reminds me of waves on a motionless ocean. Some dews rising high, rolling into valleys with no substance of life. A mysterious beauty all its own. Winds blowing relentlessly, shifting sand back and forth, reshaping dunes and valleys of the desert. Maybe they are not motionless waves after all. Maybe there is some purpose to a desert. Again the phrase appears in my mind, lingering like an unwanted specter. To be or not to be? That is the question. My soul groans and cries out. What is the answer? Only silence. The barren desert appears again. The warmth from the day lingers in the twilight hours, long after the sun descended over the horizon. Only the moon glows against the velvet canopy of sky. Stars blinking in a chorus for some cosmic audience. The desert wind becomes a cold talon. The desert's friend is loneliness. Loneliness and nothing. To be or not to be lonely? That is the question. Could this be the answer? To be nothing or to be nothing? That is the question. Could this be the answer? I am something. I am not lonely. Not like the desert. The desert has no friends. Those who traverse it do so with caution, speed, and are well prepared. To be lost in the desert is utter destruction. Its beauty drawing you in if you are not careful. I am something. Or am I? There is still no answer. Only silence. Cold, heartless silence chills me. A fatiguing recollection dances in my mind. A field of barren hostility. You were something, it chanted. You were not lonely. I pushed the thought back into the shadows of a decaying city that I seemed to wander through. Another vision comes to view. To be somebody or not to be somebody? That is the question. I pause, dwelling on the perplexity it proposes. I am somebody. The phrase rises up from the depths of my depression, my heart and soul crying in unison from their prison, the bondage they wrestle against to be free. I am somebody, I cry out. The statement bouncing off the stillness of my mind, silence laughed at me. Are you? Silence comes with a different question. Shakespeare hovers over his grave. Are you somebody? The question presses against me, suffocating me. Shakespeare holds a dark cloak against me. Yes, I am somebody, I yelled, yet my voice muffled against the thick fabric. Who? A different question. Shakespeare is silent, asking me as the heavy cloak peels away from me. Chains bound me. The metal is cold as it constricts like a boa. Who? I repeated the question. Who are you? A momentary pause. If you are somebody, then who are you? Another question. It felt like a sword put to flames and then searing it as it sliced through my flesh, burning with a nauseating stench. Silence encroaches again. Cold, brooding silence as the wound becomes a scar, a reminder. To be or not to be, that's the question. Shakespeare's ghost appears again. Chains no longer hold me captive. Cloak is no longer in his hands. He is dark with a red rose in one hand and a white rose in another, one for purity and the other for love. What is the answer? I asked. A circular argument of reason. Once again the desert floods the landscape of my mind, the stifling heat burning against my flesh, thirst parching my throat. No answer came. Nothing. Nothing, I repeated. No one was there. A heavy sigh escaped my trembling lips. No one. But you're someone, were you not? The question settled upon me like a brooding cloud hanging over the land, dark and full of anger. There was no answer that would come to my lips. I am no one. I am nothing. I sighed heavily with resolve. The interrogation flogging me with leather tentacles, striking and ripping my flesh, my body numbed and craving death. I am nothing. I am no one, I yelled in pain. Shakespeare and the desert were vanquished from my thoughts. Alone somewhere and yet nowhere at the same time. It was here that I felt the rain, a soft drizzle at first. My eyes opened to a misty gray day, the drizzle giving way to a steady downpour. You are someone, the unrepentant thought crossed my mind. The words roaring like thunder. Storms. The gray sky brightened in a series of electrified white over the city. Thunder roaring with each flash. A storm was brewing. Are there storms in the desert? I asked. There was no answer to my question. The desert gave way to the sea. Rolling and motionless dunes of sand became liquid, rising and falling in waves. The sea was breathing with white caps of fury, each wave rising in anger and slapping against the ship. The crew long abandoned her. Tall white sails bulged against the gusts of wind. Nothing. The ship rose and crashed as the sea breached the railings and water rushing across the wooden deck. The vessel groaned and creaked with mournful cries. No one is manning the helm of the ship, I weakly protested. Lightning licked across the sky like an angry god. The iridescent flash contrasted against the velvet blackness, illuminating brooding clouds that reached down and kissed the rising sea with deadly and poisonous contempt. Thunder roared its bloody, curdling battle cry. You're somebody. To be or not to be, that's your question. Shakespeare's ghost stands at the bow of the ship. I am nothing. I'm no one, I cried out. Thunder clapped with anger. I'm now cowering in the corner of the ship, like a scolded and abused child. Do you see me? Wide-eyed, scarred, and naked, my knees pulled tightly to my chest, arms hugging them. Nothing. Loneliness gives way to fear and dread. Death's breath upon the nape of my neck, whispering deadly and eternal dark secrets in my ear. Storms. Remember the storms. The voice was no longer ominous, a soft breeze in the bowels of my heart. I remember. What about the storms? The question unfolded in my thoughts. Storms. Remember the storms. The question was persistent, my response silenced. The ship and the dark sea disappearing, vanishing from my vision. Storms, came a soft whisper. Again the sky flashed and roared angrily, yet the sea subsiding and calming. Rain started falling from the pregnant clouds. No longer was I on the ship or the sea. I found myself standing in a spacious field. The meadow stretched before me with green vegetation. Centered in the field was an ancient oak tree. It stood against the storm, majestic and barren. I hear it growl in a low grumbling tone. It beckoned me closer. My child, please come. I hear it calling. To be or not to be, Shakespeare again. His spirit stood over the canopy of the oak tree. Her branches swayed with a strong wind. Leaves fluttered like a million butterflies in whispered choral music. I found myself beneath the branches. The wind grew stronger. The rain fell heavier. Yet I found peace and comfort, dry and protected. I reached out in trepidation, wanting to touch the oak tree. The trunk aged and ancient, scarred, thicker than I had seen any tree. Lightning reached down from the angry clouds like a whip, striking the majestic oak tree. The wind crackled and exploded, echoing in the storm. Fire sparked and engulfed the tree. The rain kissed away the flames, thunder shouting in anger and displeasure. Yet I felt safe under the boughs of the oak tree. Storms, the thought flashed in my mind. I remember. Storms make trees seek deeper roots, I shouted out in joy. To be or not to be, that is the question. Shakespeare's spirit stood in front of me, smiling. To be or not to be, that is my question. I thoughtfully smiled back at Shakespeare, his spirit vanishing. So also the lonely oak tree. The field no longer captivated my thoughts. Even the barren desert no longer plagued me. I found myself back on the ship. Her sails were tattered and torn. There were no more threatening waves, no more storms. There was a calm wind softly kissing against the sails. Nothing. Nothing, I muttered constantly. Waves rose and fell like a woman's bosom when she breathed. A summer breeze carried sweet tangy salt on her wings. Azure sky ostracized the dark evening. I was at the helm of the ship. Up there, on the horizon, do you see it? Shakespeare standing and smiling. Answer the question, I thought. To be or not to be, that is my question. I paused, allowing the statement to warm my soul before answering. I am the captain of my own destiny. That's who I am. I am somebody. The answer became my beacon of light as I saw the lighthouse, up on the coastal lands, the harbor beckoning me to return safely. I'm finding my way safely home. And so, I wrote that And of course, I've edited over the years, but it just was one of those profound moments, those epiphanies that I've had over the years. And so when I entered into this transitional housing program, and I had to rest up and sleep, I pretty much slept about, I think, a couple weeks. And then I was able to start getting myself back on track. I started working at Home Depot and started being around people who were in recovery dealing with their own issues, and was invited to meetings. I went to some meetings, worked with some people, and started seeing progress in my life. And then I ended up getting into my own place in the University District of Seattle, by the University of Washington, and had my little coffee shop I'd go to, my laptop computer, and worked on writing. And at this time, that was when MySpace was about. For those of us who are old enough to remember MySpace. And then, Facebook and the early days of Facebook and all that. And so for the past almost 2 weeks, I had little sleep, suffering sleep deprivations, thirsty, stressed. I pretty much looked like death warmed over. Slowly, I rested and followed the program and was able to get myself back on my feet. This was the last time I had really, truly experienced homelessness in my life. It was really the time in my life that I hit rock bottom. I still had to do a lot of growing then. Yet I have made significant progress in my life, despite some of the things that I've had to face and some of the things that I dealt with. And so when I look back on all that, that was also when I started coming back to realizing I need to make a return back to the LDS faith, and God was really working on my heart, and really brought me into a place that I had to truly accept myself for where I was at, and what I was dealing with, and what I had to overcome. And it was a lot, when they say that you are to take one day at a time, when you are to take one moment at a time, that is literally true. And for me, I had to just, if I could just get through this one day, because I'm in that survival mode. I wasn't thriving, I was surviving. And, I've had my setbacks. I've had to deal with a lot of that. And a lot of it came because the only reality that I had to rely on was my Heavenly Father, and through those inspirations and that. But there were still things that I was carrying with me, the burdens that I had to deal with that. And so my story was still being written. I was still learning how to become the hero of my own journey, and the hero of my own story, and the hero of my own recovery progress. And no matter where you find yourself at, where you're at in your recovery process, you're still growing. And it just takes patience. It just takes time, because what we have is that moment. And if I could just focus on getting myself from that one moment to the next moment, I wasn't worried about or concerned about what was going to happen down the road. I just know what was needing to be done in that moment for that time. And as I grew and got a little more responsible, I started living life. I started finding a place where I can really experience joy in my life. And I started going back to church and started getting back into fellowshipping with the LDS community. It was quite a culture shock coming back, because, you've been away from the church. I've been away from the church for 15 years. Everything's changed. It was a whole different culture than what I was used to. And I had to get myself reacquainted with that, because when I left the church, we were still using the old priesthood manuals. And then when I went back, it was like a whole different, setup with the meetings. It was a whole different setup with the curriculum, where they were going through the teachings of the presidents of the church for that. And so there was a lot of changes that I didn't even know of. So it was like I was coming back into something that was so new to me and so foreign to me. Um, and so when I talk about becoming the hero of my own story and my own personal journey of recovery, I've had to come to realize that recovery is a path full of unexpected turns, challenges, and triumphs. Throughout my personal journey, I've learned that being the hero of my own story means committing to transformation and self-discovery. Each step forward was fueled by the belief that change is both necessary and possible, even in the face of obstacles that seemed insurmountable. As I navigated through the complexities of my own personal recovery, I realized that this journey wasn't about overcoming my past struggles. It was about embracing the strength within, discovering who I am, discovering my strengths, as well as discovering the limitations that I had, the weaknesses that I still carried with me. And so it was about embracing the strength within, learning to trust myself, and finding peace in the progress. And so being the hero of my own story didn't mean facing these battles alone. It meant recognizing my capabilities and seeking support when needed. This journey of personal growth and recovery has shown me that every day is an opportunity to build a new chapter. And I was determined to write one filled with hope and resilience. And so for any of you who are on a similar path, remember, you have the power to redefine your story. Let this be the beginning of a journey where you celebrate your victories, big or small, and learn from each setback, because you're not alone in this. Together, we are able to find strength in our own stories. And so how I rose from the ashes and finding my own sense of purpose and meaning, because life can be quite unpredictable and often tossing us into a whirlwind of challenges and despair. I've definitely faced my share of struggles. However, what truly defines us is how we rise above those struggles. And in my journey, I've emerged from the ashes of despair, finding a new purpose and becoming the hero of my own story so many times. And this part of my life wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving and rediscovering who I am. And the idea of me coming to the realization that for the longest time I was living a life in survival mode, and then moving out of that survival mode and moving into a place of thriving began when I started working towards learning how to live mindfully in life and discovering my own inner strength and discovering who I am in the process. And so imagine being knocked down and the world seems to collapse around you. It's like being in a dark cave where the walls echo your every doubt. But within that darkness, I found a light, my inner strength through my faith in Jesus Christ. It was a power I never knew I had, waiting patiently to be discovered. The strength was not just physical or mental. It was a soulful resurgence that guided me. Self-belief. At the core, believing in myself was crucial. It gave me the courage to take a step forward even when the path was unclear. Patience. Healing takes time, more than we might expect. Patience became my companion, reminding me that progress is progress, no matter how small. And then the other thing that I had to learn over time is learning how to allow myself and give myself permission to be vulnerable. So embracing vulnerability as part of the process of healing and growing in my own recovery, because vulnerability often feels like a weakness. However, it is not. It is a courageous acceptance of who we are, scars and all. Opening up about my vulnerabilities allowed me to connect with others. It was like finding a secret language that only those who truly understood may speak. And so hopefully sharing my story in every conversation provides an opportunity to connect and heal. I realized that sharing my struggles has helped lighten my burden and brought support from unexpected places. And so I no longer need to be afraid to share my story, and because hopefully it inspires and empowers other people. Seeking help when needed, because it is okay to ask for help. For the longest time, I grew up learning that I was so disappointed every time I asked for help. I was put down every time I asked for help. And so I stopped asking for help. I learned how to do things on my own and figure things out for myself. because nobody else would do it. I mean, there were times in my life where I have begged. Sometimes I get into that mode. I find myself falling back into that attitude and behavior of begging when I need to realize I don't have to beg for stuff anymore. And so seeking help, it's okay to seek help. It's okay to reach out for help. And so when I reached out to those who could guide me, whether it was a therapist, friend, or a support group, they became my allies on this journey. One of the other things that I've learned over the years, when you're seeking help, you got to know who you're speaking with, because not everybody's going to want to hear what you're going through. And so you've got to really trust people, and sometimes even those people who you trust. And I think this is why a lot of us, like myself, who've had have the fear of sharing our stories, is we're afraid that they're going to go and talk to other people about it, and the whole gossip train, the gossip chain, and so there's a lot of shame and guilt with that where we feel that sense of betrayal. And that's why I love recovery rooms like Celebrate Recovery, Alcoholics Anonymous, because it is a safe space for you to go and express yourself and share your story without judgment, criticism, ridicule, and shame. The other aspect was learning how to set goals and finding purpose, because direction may sometimes seem lost when we're deep in battle. However, I had to learn the hard way that setting goals was like planting seeds of hope. Each one held a promise of something better, something meaningful. Small wins matter. Celebrating small victories kept me motivated. Each step forward was a step closer to the future I envisioned. The thing I've learned the most, and the takeaway of my own story, is this. Focus on the little wins. For me, the little wins in that moment of time was going out and work, getting a little bit of pay. And I, and of course I worried. I can't say I was not worried. And no, I was not at peace. However, focusing on those little steps got me closer to where I needed to get to in order to establish some form of stability and sanity in my life. And so a lot of times we get these unrealistic expectations that we'll have these big victories. In reality, we need to start focusing on more of the smaller wins, the smaller victories that we do, the smaller accomplishments that we make, and that will lead to those bigger wins. We then be able to see that we are able to win those bigger battles in our lives. Being the hero of my own story, basically in the end, I realized that I had held the pen to my story. I was the hero navigating through the challenges, learning and growing, because each chapter filled with lessons brought me closer to understanding my purpose. Life had a way of teaching me that even in the darkest times there is light, a future where I'm stronger, wiser, and more complete. Nobody's going to live your recovery for you. Nobody's going to come to your rescue except for Christ. And even then, we are to throw off our coat and run to Him for that healing. We come to Him for the healing. We bring ourselves to Him for the healing. And so that is another interesting component there that I've learned throughout the years in studying the scriptures as it relates to my own story and my recovery. Because this journey is not easy. It's one where rising from the ashes becomes a testament to our own personal resilience, our own personal faith, and our sense of hope, joy, and peace. Becoming the hero of my own story wasn't a choice. It was a necessity. I want to say that again. Becoming the hero of my own story was not a choice. It was a necessity. I had to become the hero of my own story because I had to face my demons. I had to face my battles. It was a necessity where it led to discovering a life full of purpose and meaning. And here's the turning point that led me on this path of healing. Because there comes a moment in every journey when a light pierces the darkness. For me, that light was my turning point. This was the moment I stopped being a passive observer in my life and became the hero of my own story. The road wasn't easy, but understanding it helped shape my recovery path. And here's the stages that helped mark this pivotal moment in my life. One is the realization and acceptance. When you think about the 12 steps, And this is how the 12 steps has helped me grow in my own personal recovery. One, it's coming to the realization that I'm powerless over my addiction, my afflictions, and that my life had become unmanageable. I brought myself into the place. It wasn't anybody else's fault. I had to take accountability and responsibility for my own actions, my own attitudes and behaviors, and the poor decisions that I've made, as well as realizing that, things happen and that are beyond my control because of other people's decisions at the time as well. What I do have the power to manage is how I'm going to respond to that. And the first place that you learn how to respond to it is, number one, recognizing and accepting the reality and embracing the reality that you are just broken and that you are just completely powerless. And so the first step in my journey was realizing that I needed change. It's like seeing the cracks in the foundation of a house and knowing that you can't be ignored. I found myself at a crossroads where I had to choose, continue down a destructive path or face the reality head on. Acceptance wasn't about giving up. It was about acknowledging the truth. It was like looking in a mirror and seeing both the scars and the potential for healing. And so when you come to this realization of your own powerlessness, your need for change, the reality that a power greater than yourself has to come into play, and then your willingness to submit and surrender your life and will over to the care of God, you then are able to be in a place to rationally and radically identify the problem. First, I had to pinpoint what was wrong. I was brutally honest with myself about where I was and where I wanted to be. I never thought in a million years that in my young adult life that I would just go through such hardships. And, again, it was poor choices on my part. Poor choices in relationships, poor choices in situations and circumstances that I didn't think things through because I was very impulsive and compulsive of that. And so I had to learn to identify the problem. What was the root cause of the problem? And for me, there were several root causes of the problem. One, holding on to the baggage of anger, bitterness, and resentment towards other people, especially those close to me. Third, it was the unrealistic expectations that people owed me things, that I had an attitude of entitlement, that I deserve to be helped, that it's other people's responsibilities to help me. And so I operated under that perspective and viewpoint. And then the other issue was, not taking accountability for my life, that I always blamed other people. It was other people's fault in relationship to that. And so seeking support, I reached out for help, understanding that doing everything alone wasn't a sign of strength, rather of isolation. The next step is building a sober support system. And this is where, we have the fellowship. We have recovery programs like AA, Celebrate Recovery. Because imagine being lost in a forest without a map or guidance. This is what recovery felt like until I built a support system. Friends and family turned into my compass and my anchor. For me, it was really mainly people that I've come across that have spoken into my life where I needed to be spoken. Even if I didn't want to hear it, they spoke into my life, and it brought me to that realization that things needed to change. I needed to do something, and I needed to take responsibility. And then people did come in and surround me and help me and provide what I really needed at that time. And that's the way it works. And then it comes to the commitment of change. If you're not committing to change, then you're not going to change. You have to be committed to change. And so for me, it was, what was the costs and benefits? What was I willing to give up to commit myself over to change? So deciding to change is one thing. Committing to it is another. It was as if I had taken the first step onto a new path that was simultaneously frightening and exhilarating. This commitment meant waking up every day with intention. And again, it comes back to setting small goals. I began setting daily goals, small yet significant milestones that kept me motivated, being realistic about it, being smart about it, not being grandiose. celebrating the small achievements. Each achievement, no matter how minor, was a testament to my dedication and was celebrated. Finding new passions. Recovery opened doors to new interests and hobbies that had previously been overshadowed by my struggles. These new passions became lifelines, infusing joy and meaning to my life. One of my passions is to write, and to share. Writing stories, whether people read them, whether people appreciate them. It's something that helps me process and understand and make sense of the things that I'm going through. And so, one, I learned how to rekindle old hobbies. I revisited favorite pastimes that brought happiness before my struggles took hold. One of them that I engaged in recently in the last several years is introducing my young daughter to fishing and taking her fishing. She's now 14. We don't go fishing as much as father and daughter. It kind of bothers me, to be honest. I'm a little disappointed in that. However, I do also recognize that she's growing into a young woman and she's got other interests that she's pursuing. And it was just a time that, we were able to spend together and have that relationship with each other. And so rekindling old habits, and finding that and exploring new interests, trying new activities was like unlocking hidden doors to joy. Creativity and curiosity became my new allies. One of the things that I just picked up was, when I was a lot younger, I had this bright idea that, I want to play the greatest instrument of all, and that was the harmonica. So about a month ago, I got a harmonica off of Amazon, and I'm slowly learning how to play the harmonica. At one time, I was given a banjo, and I was actually learning how to teach. I was teaching myself how to play the banjo, because that was another instrument. Unfortunately, that was taken away, and have not been able to replace it. And so it is what it is. Life goes on, and you have to, as they say, roll with the punches. But it's doing things like that, putting yourself out there, finding new hobbies and interests, and getting plugged in, and building things that you are interested in doing. And so throughout this journey, becoming the hero of my own story has taught me that the path to healing is neither straightforward nor easy. However, acknowledging the turning point was like finding a map in chaos, directing me towards recovery. Instead of being a bystander in my own life, I'm paving the way to a healthier future, one step at a time. And here's my story of redemption, going from darkness to light. Because finding my way out of the darkness wasn't easy. It felt at times like I was wandering through endless tunnels without a hint of light. However, I knew I was not only struggling for myself, but for everyone who might find hope in my story. Being the hero of my own story wasn't just a concept, it became a heartfelt mission. My transformation was about reclaiming my life, winning battles with both big and small, and finding genuine hope when it seemed the hardest to grasp. Embracing vulnerability. Because by embracing vulnerability being the key to my transformation, there was a long time I saw vulnerability as a weakness. I was afraid to share my struggles, wrap my words around feelings that threatened to consume, because I have to take a step back here and take a breath for a minute. I was afraid to share my struggles, wrap my words around feelings that threatened to consume me. Isn't it strange how we often hide what can heal us? The act of opening up demanded courage, yet the rewards were endless. And here's the reason vulnerability was so vital for me. Much like allowing sunlight to touch a wilted plant, opening myself up let the healing in. I learned that vulnerability didn't mean exposure to harm. Instead, it was about daring to be honest with myself and others. Through sharing, I found strength in unexpected places. And here's some ways that embracing vulnerability fueled my own personal recovery. It allowed me to connect with others. By opening up, it forged connections with people whose stories mirrored my own. This wasn't just empathy, it was shared strength, a mutual understanding that grew stronger with every conversation. real self-reflection. Vulnerability pushed me to confront uncomfortable truths. I had to face uncomfortable truths. I had to face the uncomfortable reality that I was the way I was because of poor attitude and behavior. And because I had to learn how to confront these uncomfortable truths, it allowed me to peel away the layers of denial and avoidance that I used as a defense mechanism. This raw honesty paved the way for genuine self-discovery and growth. And then having the courage to reach out and ask for help, because admitting I couldn't do it alone was freeing. Vulnerability gave me permission to seek guidance, lean on support systems, and allow healing into spaces I previously guarded and fortified those defenses. Strongholds. They were my strongholds that I had to break down, When, and it's interesting because one of the things that actually brought all this to surface was I entered into the field as a drug and alcohol counselor, and I was in the field for over 7 years. And one of the things that I presented within a group therapy session was breaking down the strongholds that keep us captive in our own addictions and dysfunction. And we fortify these strongholds through denial, through dismissiveness, through deflection, through, delusions, delusional thinking, and unrealistic expectations. And so we had to strip away all of that. Well, what happens when you break down the strongholds? Because the strongholds is a form of defense. It's a form of protection. And when you break down those strongholds, you are left in a place of vulnerability. And so we don't want to be vulnerable, so we want to keep these strongholds up. And so through these steps, vulnerability turned from a perceived enemy into an ally. It taught me that being the hero of my own story meant embracing the flawed, beautiful human parts of myself. It was less about perfection and more about the courage to continue, scars and all. And so, what are your walls that you've built against vulnerability? And how are they serving you today? Because maybe it's time we both let a little light into our eyes. The more I read the scriptures and the more I study the scriptures, the more I come to appreciate the simplicity of the gospel message. And in the Gospel of John, it talks about Christ being the light of the world coming into a place of darkness. And the darkness does not comprehend that light, because if it did comprehend the light, then the deeds that are done in darkness are exposed for what they really are. And so when we are talking about healing, when we're talking about overcoming our hurts and hang-ups, when we're talking about struggling and overcoming addiction in our lives, and any dysfunctions, codependency and everything, we need to allow the light to pierce into our hearts and minds and spirit so that it can reveal and expose those things that have been kept in the dark. The ugly things about who we are. The ugliness of the reality of our person, our false sense of self. And that's what Christ says, is when he comes into the heart of men, when he comes into the heart of each individual, he is going to start exposing every crevice that is dark, and then we are to remove that from our lives. We are to work on removing that from our lives. And it's not something that's done overnight. It is not done overnight. It is something that we struggle with and we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so finding strength in pain becomes a story of recovery for me, because life has a way of throwing challenges at us when we least expect it. My own personal journey was no exception. What started out as ordeal gradually turned into a source of strength, crafting me into the hero of my own story. Pain was not just an emotion, but a powerful teacher that pushed me beyond my perceived limits. It forced me to dig deep within, searching for the strength I didn't know I needed, nor I didn't know I had. Through recovery, I discovered resilience wasn't a far-off concept, but something simmering within me, waiting to be unleashed. Learning to heal is a process that I also embraced through a variety of methods. Because in the process of healing, I embraced a variety of methods to stitch back the pieces of my life. Each day brought new lessons, and every step was a testament to my fortitude. This included therapy sessions where I engaged in therapy that allowed me to voice my struggles and unearth solutions, because it was like shining a light into those dark corners, gradually revealing clarity where confusion once reigned. Mindful practice has been the core part of my own personal journey. Meditation and breathing exercises became my anchors. They grounded me in the present, teaching me to navigate the choppy waters of emotion with a steadier hand. If you are following me on my other website and YouTube channel, I talk about meditative and contemplative prayer. It's no longer, just a simple prayer. It is meditative, it's contemplative. And I'm now also, within the last couple of weeks, shifting from having prayers that are from the attitude of a beggar to the attitude of a believer. And I share that on my YouTube channel, Mindful Latter-day Saint Christian Living and Apologetics, where I talk about that in reference to Isaiah 40:1-2. And so mindfulness practice, where meditation and breathing exercise became my anchors. They grounded me in the present, teaching me to navigate the choppy waters of emotion with a steadier hand. Physical activity, exercise, I'm still working on that, honestly. I'm struggling in that area. It's been a real challenge for me. One, I'm just lazy, to be honest. And two, I just, I have all kinds of excuses why. And I need to break free of the excuse mentality and just make that commitment. And just, I don't know what it is that's holding me back. I know I need to exercise. And I think probably the thing that is holding me back right now is I don't want to do it alone. I don't want to exercise alone. I've made several attempts to do it, but I don't have anyone to hold me accountable for it. And when this Celebrate Recovery meeting started up at this local church that I was invited to participate in, I met a gentleman, and I was impressed to ask him if he is willing to be my workout partner in accountability so I can work towards losing weight. And I haven't seen him since. So my biggest thing is I'm in the stage of change right now with, I bounce between contemplation and preparation, and I haven't taken really any serious action on that. And so I need to start doing that. And again, and I guess it's just to get out of the mindset that, going back to what I said earlier, it's just the little things and dealing with the little things. Community support, surrounding myself with a supportive circle has made a huge difference. They are my cheerleaders, offering encouragement when my steps faltered. Knowing I wasn't alone in this journey provided a comforting refuge. Then creative expression, art and writing became my emotional escape valves, allowing me to pour out feelings that words sometimes fail to capture. They've helped me articulate the inevitable, making sense of the chaos within. And so finding healing in pain is a journey that doesn't follow a straight path, but rather weaves through the valleys of doubt and peaks of hope. Each method was a stepping stone, contributing to a mosaic of recovery that ultimately helped me redefine my strength. Through this, I found the hero I was meant to be in my own story. And I'm still working on it. I'm still writing my story. So when you slay one dragon, there's going to be another dragon ready for you to slay. And that's your dragon to slay. The biggest thing for me, though, is finally coming to a place in my life where I found a sense of meaning and purpose. Because finding my purpose has felt like rewriting my own story. With each step, I've embraced life fully, becoming the hero of my own story, where my journey has been about discovering who I am and what I stand for. Recovery brought challenges, but it also invited growth, reflection, and a deeper connection to myself. Two key elements, mindfulness and spiritual exploration, were at the core of this transformation. And so the role of mindfulness in my own personal journey has been more than just a practice for me. It's been a lifeline. By focusing on being present in the moment, I found a way to breathe through the chaos because it's helped me slow down and look at life differently. And here's how mindfulness played a role. One, it has significantly reduced stress. By concentrating on the present, I learned to let go of past mistakes and anxieties about the future. Two, it's enhanced clarity. Mindfulness brought clarity to my thoughts, allowing me to make decisions with a clearer mind. I tell you, since I've been engaged in mindfulness, I have had more significant and profound personal revelations from reading and studying the scriptures when I approach it from a mindful perspective and able to take a moment to breathe and meditate and allow those distractions to ebb and flow so that way I can be in that state of mind where I can receive guidance and clarity from my Heavenly Father when I read the scriptures and study the scriptures. And it has been a significant strength to my own personal faith because it's enhanced my faith by promoting a sense of calm and acceptance. As I meditated, I felt a deeper connection with my beliefs in my Heavenly Father. Mindfulness transformed how I interacted with myself and the world around me. It was like having a gentle guide reminding me to pause and reflect before reacting. And I've learned to be more emotionally responsive than it is to be emotionally reactive. And it's still a work in progress. Spiritual growth and faith exploration. My roots in the LDS Church provided a solid foundation. However, recovery led me to explore other denominations. This exploration enriched my faith and expanded my understanding. Broadened perspectives by studying different faiths brought new insights and wisdom that aligned with my life experiences. Deepened connections by exploring various spiritual teachings allowed me to find a sense of belonging and purpose. And inspirational lessons where each faith offered unique lessons that helped me view life with hope and compassion. And so this exploration wasn't about abandoning my background. It was about building on it, embracing diverse spiritual teachings that became a canvas on which I'm able to paint my beliefs, creating a vivid picture of my faith journey. It encouraged me to be curious, open, and to connect deeply with my inner self. The path to spiritual growth was not just enlightening, it was transformative. And then rekindling my faith and community. By rekindling my faith was like finding a lantern in a darkened room. It wasn't immediate, it was a gradual process that required patience and openness. The process not only involved introspection, it also involved an active seeking out a community to be a part of. The support I found there was invaluable. Here's how engaging with Scripture and building a personal connection with God through prayer became anchors in my own journey. Engaging with the Scriptures allowed me to reconnect with my faith, and it meant for me to dive deep into Scriptures and understanding their timeless wisdoms. I realized that each verse had a lesson, sometimes hidden, waiting just for me. Reading stories from the Bible, I found heroes and lessons that mirrored my own challenges. This made me reflect on how I could be the hero of my own story, finding strength and resilience in every line. Stories of strength, reading about figures like David overcoming Goliath, or Moses leading people to freedom, taught me about courage and determination. Timeless lessons, where each passage became a guide, offering insights on patience, empathy, and forgiveness. And so by engaging with the Scriptures brought more than just reading the word. It was more than just reading the words. It was about internalizing lessons and knowing that God's love and wisdom are constant and even in turbulent times. It is about applying those things that I learned from the Scriptures in my own life. Prayer and personal connection with my Heavenly Father, where prayer became my lifeline, a direct line to the divine. It started as a whisper, a plead, but grew into a dialogue that brought peace. I found that speaking to God gave voice to my fears and hopes. Daily rituals as a spiritual discipline, I began setting aside specific times during the day for prayer and meditation. This consistency helped in settling my mind and providing clarity. Silent conversations, where meditation offered a quiet space to listen to, feel God's presence, where I felt enveloped in His warm embrace. Prayer and meditation were more than just routine. They were a way to keep myself centered amid life's chaos. Through this connection, I learned that no burden is too heavy to share with God, and no joy too small to celebrate. In weaving these practices into my daily life, I learned that faith isn't just about belief. It's an active journey of connection, reflection, and community support. It's about being present with myself and with others, knowing that together I'm able to lift others up and move forward with courage and love. The power of hope and recovery, where my own personal journey is concerned, hope has been a constant companion in illuminating dark paths and lifting heavy burdens. It's like a lighthouse guiding through stormy seas, always pointing towards a safer shore. The belief that change is possible fuels the fire of recovery, helping one become the hero of their own story. I want to explore with you how hope acts as a beacon in the recovery process. Hope as a metaphor, because hope isn't just something that you feel. Think of it as the engine in a car. It drives us forward, especially when the road feels long and winding. Without hope, the journey can feel impossible, but with it, every step taken is a step closer to the goal. It encourages us to get up, try again, and push through challenges. Hope whispers that the best is yet to come. And here's how I found building hope daily has impacted my own recovery. Because hope isn't a one-time event, it's something that may be built upon daily. Here are some practices that's helped nurture hope within me and my own recovery progress. Positive affirmations. Every morning I remind myself that about the small wins. This creates a ripple effect, feeding the belief that recovery is achievable. Setting small goals. Achieving small milestones may make hope tangible. It's like climbing a mountain. Each step forward brings me closer to the summit. Surrounding with positivity, keeping positive and supportive people around strengthens hope. Just as plants thrive when watered regularly, friends and mentors may be hope's cheerleaders. And here's the impact of hope on healing, because the power of hope isn't just about feelings, as I said. It is because it has real effects on recovery. Studies have found that individuals with hope are likely to see better outcomes. Hope helps the mind focus on positive changes, fostering resilience and fueling the courage to face fears. It's like having a compass that always points north, no matter how lost one might feel. And hope's role in overcoming challenges, because being the hero of my own story means battling through adversities with hope as my armor. Hope provides the strength needed to persevere against obstacles. It transforms setbacks into lessons and challenges into stepping stones. With each difficulty faced, hope acts as a reminder that I hold the power to shape my narrative. And cultivating a hopeful future for myself and my recovery and continuing to be the hero of my own story means creating a hopeful future where I'm making conscious choices on a daily basis. Whether it's practicing gratitude, seeking joy in small things, or finding purpose in helping others, hope thrives when fed with intentional actions. Ultimately, hope is more than just wishful thinking. It's the force that empowers us to reclaim our stories and write new chapters full of growth, strength, and renewal. And so, with all of this said, embracing the powerful journey of recovery requires courage and unwavering faith in oneself, and requires courage to express unwavering faith in Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ. Because without them, I don't think I'd be where I'm at today. Without that hope and joy and peace of mind that I've attained and continue to attain, I don't think I'd be where I'm at today. Because throughout the process, discovering the pinnacle of human potential may transform lives, teaching us that even the most challenging moments hold lessons. Purpose, faith, and mindfulness became torchbearers, guiding of one's life's darkest tunnels and illuminating the path forward, where it's played a pivotal role in the grand narrative of personal growth and healing. As I reflect on my journey with every twist and turn, I have been reminded that I was the hero of my own story all along. I found strength in vulnerability and wisdom in moments of silence. With each step, I learned to trust the process, to embrace every obstacle as a teacher, and every success a milestone. To everyone on this path, I encourage you to embrace your heroic journey. It's unique to you and filled with infinite possibilities. This journey is yours. Own it. If it seems daunting, remember that even the bravest stumble, yet they rise again. So I encourage you to take a moment today and reflect. What are you fighting for? Recognize the strength within you through Jesus Christ, because what does the Apostle Paul says? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And as you do so, as you rely on that, as you believe on that, embrace that, and find that strength within you through Jesus Christ, you become the hero that you are to become and continue to be going forward. You are becoming the person you are meant to become. Let this be your inspiration to keep going. And I hopefully look forward to sharing more stories in the future. I want to thank you for your time, for you taking the time to listen to this and being part of my journey and allowing me to share with you my story, because your support makes everything worth it. And speaking of support, I want to be able to encourage you to share this with other people, to subscribe to this podcast. This is a new podcast that I've decided to do. I've been thinking about doing, and hopefully, it's separate from all the other content that I'm pushing out and publishing regarding the LDS faith, the Come Follow Me, the scripture studies and commentaries, and all of that. This is something that I am also doing, have been wanting to do, and have been in a time of prayer and meditating upon it, and I just felt moved to do this because there are people out there hurting. There are people out there struggling. And there are far too many people who are surviving rather than thriving, and hopefully this is a message of hope for you. Hopefully it inspires you to move out of that, moving out of being a beggar and moving into where you're a believer and you're thriving in your own recovery progress. And if you are a person of means, or if you want to show some gratitude and appreciation, I have a thing in the description on the podcast where you can make a financial donation. It does cost me to be able to host this on Podbeam, so I can get this put out where you can listen to it on iHeart, Amazon Music, and Spotify. And so right now I do know that it takes time for it to register on those platforms, but it does cost for me to host this on Podbeam. And so your support matters, and it will help go to provide additional resources and build up this. And if you're not able to make a financial donation, that's fine. The other form of support is to engage in the conversation. Share with me your thoughts and engage in the discussions on this. And I'll drop the links on how you can connect with me as well. And hopefully you will subscribe and stay tuned for more episodes of Sacred Sobriety, where you learn how to become the hero of your own story.